Hi everybody, thanks for watching. It's cold, it's December, but it's still nice enough for us to be outside practicing. We're going to continue through the sword form no matter how cold it gets, but we are almost at the end of the third sequence. In fact, this is the last movement in the third sequence. This is Heavenly Horse Gallops Across the Sky. This is also referred to as empty stance with sword chop, or kind of the Western version, I guess, of horse galloping across the sky. Pegasus gallops across the sky. We're going to go with Heavenly Horse Gallops Across the Sky, and you'll see this particular movement. This is a deviation from your standard line. We're going to go 90 degrees forward. We're going to do a step and then a strike with a step on that particular movement. So watch the demonstration, and then we'll go through the detailed instructions. So let's break this down in the detailed instructions. As I said, we're on our, this is our normal line here. We're going to deviate a little bit. So we did Comet Chases the Moon here, right? We've got a strike here. This one's going to test the suppleness of your wrist, because what you're going to do is you're going to dip the sword down, turn it, and then come over in this cut. So you're making basically a 270 degree cut, or a 90 degree to the left cut. So flipping up through here and coming down is your sword motion. So from here, you just relax your wrist and turn it over. These are movements that we've done in the Qigong form when we do movements like this, when we test the suppleness of our wrist in the flower turning or some of the other movements that we do. That's where it's going to come in handy. So if you're practicing those, this is going to be a very simple movement for you. If you're not practicing those, then you know why this is more complicated than it should be. So when we come from Comet Chases the Moon, right? From here, again, we're going to dip the sword down, we're going to come up, transition, we're going to step forward, and we're just going to flick the sword forward. This is a piercing movement forward, like we do in the Qigong movement, but you've got to turn it over. You have to have a relaxed wrist with this one. If you're trying to muscle it with your wrist, it's going to be hard. So you're going to relax and turn. You've got to be comfortable holding the sword. A, or you're going to drop it if you try and relax too much, or B, it's going to be too stiff and you're just not going to get that turn. We're turning from this direction all the way around and coming to this direction. So this movement comes after a strike here, and it's going to strike in this direction. So as you transition through there. So from here, our weight distribution, we're at about 60% forward on this leg, 40% here. We need to bring the weight back, turn, transition into this stance, step forward, and then finish with an empty stance. So mountain climbing to empty stance is your stance. So let's talk about how the stance is, how the legs move. We'll take the sword out of this for a second. So from here, transition, transition, step, step, empty stance. Your mountain climbing stance, make sure it's good and you've got distance between, and then as you step forward into empty stance, you root this leg in. Try and put it all together from here. Shift, turn, step, flick. Sword secret, grabs on right away, comes up, turns under. As you dip the sword back and you're transitioning it through here, sword secret helps. It keeps the roundness here, it keeps your chest in, and allows you then to step forward and to strike forward with this. So again, from here, weight shift back, step, thrust, thrust. When we do our lines and we do this particular movement, this is what we're talking about. It is a forward thrusting motion. It's got to pierce. You're not just putting the sword out there, you're not just leaning it forward. You have to have the effect of being able to pierce through. So turn and pierce, turn and pierce, turn and pierce. Not just turn and chop. It's not a cut down, you did that here. This one is just turning it over, pierce. So it's a forward thrusting motion coming into the camera in this case, right? Look at it from this direction. If we go from here, bring it back, turn, thrust. Thrust, not chop. So we've talked a little bit about the common mistakes that we'll see with this one, okay? As you're going through here, standard weight transition rules apply, right? If I want to turn this foot and I'm going in this direction, I need to turn this foot in this direction. I've got to shift my weight to close, shift my weight to bring in for a transition, step forward, step forward. So from a foot perspective, make sure you're transitioning equally well through there and you apply those good Tai Chi principles as part of that goes. Other movements with this that we'll see people doing incorrectly here. Not closing this foot, just trying to turn it here. It feels awkward, so hopefully you're feeling that as you go through and doing this, but you're not bringing your foot up here and then stepping through. You want to be able to turn it. You want to bring the weight back, turn, step, and thrust. The transition of weight is standard stepping, so hopefully you're doing your stepping practice, or you've been doing this for enough time that you understand the core principles of stepping. And again, you're going 90 degrees from here to here with your attack. So after you've finished here, you're going to dip the tip of the sword and then bring it forward and thrust. Not dip and chop, dip and thrust. So loose wrist with a thrusting movement forward. So this is one movement that we'll see where somebody's trying to do a chop, right? You just did a chop in this direction, you want to do another chop in this direction. Not the movement. Thrust movement. Turn, thrust. So other common mistakes with this. From here, it's just best to bring the sword here for the sword secret so you can transition and thrust. You don't want to do here and then eventually just kind of have it meet up at the pass when it comes forward. So bring it up here, turn, step, thrust. Just let it follow along. This is helping, so let it help as far in this movement as you possibly can, coming around and thrusting forward. So other common mistakes, you're transitioning 90 degrees here, so you want to fully transition your attention forward. You don't want to be leaning, you don't want to come forward too far. Empty stance in this case, and I'll step back a little bit more so you can see, empty stance means almost all the weight is here. This is just touching the earth because I can kick with this movement if I want to. It's the transition here, so my strike comes forward here, right? This is a good rooted stance here. This is empty. I don't want to be, I'm leaning a little bit here. We're on a slight slope. But when you're stable in your stance on a flat area here, you're stepping forward and your thrust comes right there, you know, on the vertical plane. So that's really what you want to see. You want to come from here, step, step, thrust in through there. So the before and after on this, we've gone through, and we'll do this one from the end of push the boat against the current. We're going to transition back, come through, comet chasing the moon, come back 180 degrees, then transition forward through here, and then one of my favorite movements is lift the curtain. You're going to step back, turn, and lift up as you come through. That's the 3-move sequence, but this is the end of the 3rd sequence. So the next video you'll see we'll do a complete 3rd sequence so you can get some perspective on how that all looks, but that's the before and after of this particular movement. Okay, so follow along with me. We're going to stay with this as our line. So our transition is going to come into the camera, but then I'll take it back on another line and we'll do a different angle so you get a little bit different perspective. So follow along first with our standard line and begin. Now let's do it on this line. So if I ended up here with the movement, this is what the transition would look like. Thank you.